here we go with the next episode of One Piece. This is the Q&A portion. Full disclosure, this is only a couple hours after I posted the last episode. It's going to be a while. We've got a lot of questions. It's only been a couple hours, but we already have like 16 questions on the rewind and comments. 16 questions and comments on the rewind and 4 questions and comments on the actual episode. And it's only been out for a couple hours. Like, that's crazy engagement. And actually 3 now. 3 questions. I'll do the actual episode questions and comments first. So I figured since we already have so many questions, I might as well, I've got enough to do a Q&A, watch the episode, do the rewind, edit all of it, but not export it until this is Wednesday night, 10:30. You know, the video's only been out for a couple hours. I'll wait a full 24 hours. Any further questions and comments, I'll do another video addressing those, put that at the end of this Q&A before the rewind. But everything else will have been recorded, it'll have been edited, it'll be ready to go. And that way I can just do these final Q&A of whatever comes after this. And then be ready first thing Friday morning. Now, the people on YouTube who see this in a few weeks, on regular YouTube, you don't give a shit how the sausage is made. But I'd just like to do full disclosure. Because basically for these I've been doing, every other day. I'll do it, I'll wait 48 hours and then, finish it, record the next one and all that shit. And just a reminder, for people on YouTube, if you guys are feeling a little left out, I realize like halfway through that speech I'm talking to patrons, but this is going on public YouTube as well. So I just want to reiterate, any questions or comments after episode 1132, forward, ever, if I'm still alive, and this is before the heat death of the universe, and I'm still alive, I will come back and address that question or comment. As long as One Piece still exists. If I haven't, gotten a real job somewhere. So, once this hits YouTube, don't be afraid to leave comments for this episode, for any of the previous episodes. Like, something came to mind, you're like, well, that was weeks ago, I'm not a patron. I'm sure a lot of people, they're not in a position to be on Patreon. It's fine. I try to accommodate both sides, right? So, anyway, all that aside, let's just get into it. These 3 comments for the episode 1136 are all from Power of Death. This was a chapter that made me cry. Gee, I wonder why. And probably it was a hell of a lot more obvious. That's another thing, too, by the way. It'd be hard to miss shit in the manga. My biggest experience for reading a story while it came out, a long-running, involved, lore-heavy, character-heavy, makes you laugh, makes you cry story was Lock and Key. The Lock and Key comic books by Joe Hill, Stephen King's son, and then there was an artist. And I was there when it was coming out. Basically, I ran across the trade paperback of the first story arc, the very first story arc. And he would do it, basically it'd be 6-issue arcs. And I believe that the whole series ended up being 6 or 8 6-issue arcs, and then some. There'd be little short stories, 1-issue short stories in between the arcs, right? And a few other little extra things. But I ran across the trade paperback, read it, loved it, then started in. I think it was like 3 issues into the next arc, which I think was about the head key or something like that. And from there on. I was collecting it every month. Now, I say every month. They had a lot of production problems, a lot of publishing issues. The artist was a slow artist, and he has kids. I understand that. Look, nobody understands more than me the way life can pull you away from what you want to do, the content creation portion of your life. But my God, that dude was slow. I know Joe Hill's he's a workaholic, so the issue wasn't him. It was the artist. He was slowing things down. So you would have it was supposed to be a 6-issue arc would come out over the course of 6 months. They'd take a month or 2 off. They release a one-shot short story, take another month or 2 off, and do the next 6-issue arc. That 6-issue arc should have taken 6 months. It would take 8 to 9, 10 months. And then everything else they would still take the breaks after the arc, though, right? It got really frustrating, and it eventually killed my enthusiasm for the series, because there would be a time back in the like I said, the first arc was a trade paperback. I was halfway through the second arc, and then the third arc was really good, and it was the one where we really started having these production problems, right? So basically, by that point, I'd been a fan for over a year, and what I would do is when there was a new issue of Lock and Key, I would go to the comic book store every few weeks. I had a pull list, and they would give me everything that was on the pull list, and then I would go home. First thing I would read would be Lock and Key, but before I read the current issue of Lock and Key, I would go back and read the last 2 or 3 issues. Especially like all the way back to the beginning of the story arc, and I would savor it. I would sit there and read those back issues, cover to cover, and then here we are with this new issue that I'd never read before. And then, this process would be 3 or 4 hours. I'd just be laying there in bed. I can picture it now. Laying there in bed, got my little lamp on, on the end table, just reading this shit, loving it. The world didn't matter. I had taken the afternoon off. It was an event. It was an event reading. Last time this happened to me. The Unwritten was the only other comic book series I enjoyed that much and did it that way, but they had a really tight, and they were coming out at the same time as like they had a tight protect. Their artist was awesome. Not only were they doing an issue every single month with no break months, like just every single month, they were doing extra issues. So you'd have issue 45 and then 45.5. And next month it'd be 46 and 46.5. And the extra issues would be like a side story, right? Kind of like what we consider flashbacks. Like the flashback arc would be happening at the same time as the main story. They wouldn't make you wait like One Piece does. You got to sit here and wait until we finish the flashback. He would be doing the flashbacks adjacent to the main story. And it was just one guy. That dude was a workaholic like a mug. And so was the Mike Carey, the writer of The Unwritten. He's the one that did the Lucifer spinoff of Sandman, right? They were a great team. And so it got to the point where it's like they were doing twice as many issues a year as Lock and Key. Twice as many issues a year. Because they wouldn't always do a 0.5. Usually there would be 4.5s per year. There'd be a 4-issue flashback arc each year, and then there'd be the 12 regular issues. And man, like I said, it was just one writer and one artist, and man, they were cranking that shit out. Now, the art wasn't quite as good in The Unwritten. Like the art in the Lock and Key was lavish. I'll put it that way. It is higher quality, so there is that. So I'm not trying to be a complete dick here, but man, it was kind of annoying. But then eventually, it sucked out my enthusiasm. It killed my enthusiasm for Lock and Key, and I stopped doing it. It stopped becoming appointment reading, because it'd be like, man, it's been 2 months since the last issue. And then I would finally get an issue. I remember one time it had been 10 weeks since the last issue. So then it was like there was the 4 issues in the arc, and finally got the 5th issue, and then we're waiting for the 6th issue for it to conclude. I was like, I'm just going to wait until the 5th issue comes out and read them both together, rather than sit here on these cliffhangers. And then by the time the 6th issue came out, like 6 weeks later, I was in the middle of a project. So then it was like it was a month and a half into their hiatus between the arcs when I was like, oh yeah, I guess I never finished reading that. And then after, it was just never appointment reading again. It's a real damn shame, man, to be that enthusiastic for a story and just be dying for the next issue, and they take so goddamn long you don't even care anymore. It just kind of sucks. But anyway, that was the experience. The whole thing I got off on this was, I never missed any plot detail of Lock and Key when I would do that. I'd pour over it, right? Like, because with a comic book or a manga, you don't have to leave a panel until you're ready to leave a panel. So, man, you're scrutinizing that shit. You're looking at everything. You look at the dialogue. You look at the drawings. If there's something in somebody's back pocket, it's the only... for me, I think the anime is superior in all but one way to a manga. It just is. There's just no comparison to the immersion. And I tell you, I was immersed in Lock and Key, the comic book. I was immersed. So I'm not saying you can't be immersed. But there are just practical limitations of static images and text. There's just a barrier of entry there. Like, there's just only so immersed you can be. And the more immersed you are, is probably the better imagination you have. So an anime is just going to carry you along better. And then you add in the music. And then you add in the motion, right? And it's just superior, especially the music. Music can make you cry almost by itself. So you take a powerful story, however powerful it is on the page, add the music, you're even more blown away. So yeah, I was sobbing like a baby, and I believe you were even without the music with this. Because there were some times I cried reading Lock and Key, which is my point of all this. I totally believe that made you cry. 10 minutes in, I'm one sentence into the first question. We need to speed this up. This is going to be another one of these 3 hour. Like the last Q&A for the podcast is 3 hours. Like I've got to stop talking so much. But yeah, I do believe for a manga or a comic book to make you cry, it has to be 10 times better than an equivalent anime because they don't have the music. The music makes all the difference, and also sometimes even just emotion. The motion of the starlight, the images, right? Like the those little lights, the 1,000 points of light or whatever. Like that got me. Like just something about that, just the mystical, ethereal quality of that got to me as well. So that was something else, man. Then the motion of the tears, you can see the tears on somebody's face, but it's a static image. You got to mentally make the move when they're moving. It's just a superior format. Like that's all it is. It just makes it more immersive. The immersion is better. But yeah, I've had books make me cry, and I've definitely had comic books make me cry. So I believe it. Been waiting to see this animated, and it was even sadder watching the episode. Yeah, because of music. I think it's just the music, really. And then, like I said, some of the motion can really do it for you too. But I do think it's a hell of a lot harder to miss details if it's a static page because you don't have to leave a panel until you're ready to leave a panel. In anime, man, it's right past you. Look at the final shot. I went back and looked at it after I recorded the rewind earlier today. There was a wide shot where she's sitting on top of the pipe, and she had just finished watching the memories, and it's a wide shot, and she's obviously crying, and she's like hunched over crying. And then we get the close-up. And even on the rewind, I only saw the close-up. I didn't even see the wide shot. It wasn't until I was editing that I noticed the wide shot. I was like, oh, yeah, there was a wide shot there, too. So it's just so easy with these quick shots to miss things. Because you don't control the pace of that. They do. And some of these are really quick. And so it rewards rewatching, which is what these rewinds are all about. But the manga is superior. The only way the manga is superior is you move at your pace. And so you're not going to miss anything if you give a shit. If you care about the material, you're not going to miss anything. You're going to check out every damn panel. Maybe the first time you blow through it because you just want to see what's going to happen. But you're going back and you're looking at every single panel and you're checking out all the details at your own pace. You're not missing a damn thing. So that's the one way the manga is superior. I think Oda wants us to build a relationship with Bonnie first through the arc, then drop the flashback, or flashback won't be as emotional if we barely know who Bonnie is. I agree with that. I already said he's a genius. I already said I don't know a goddamn thing, right? Like, he's right, I'm wrong. I'm just going to put that out there. He's right, I'm wrong. And this is just an example of one of the reasons why. I'm sure he had a bunch of reasons why he did it the way he did it. So I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. Except, the one thing that I feel very strongly about is I just think it's a dick move to be in the middle of a confrontation with somebody like Saturn. And he's done this before, in the middle of some of these other confrontations. And then you just cut to the flash. Like, if right before Saturn shows up, you could do this. He did it intentionally because he wants us to be, oh my God, I can't wait, now we gotta wait. That is a writing method. It's a writing thing. You don't give people what they want, you give them what they need when you're a writer. It is true. But you can take it too far, especially if we're doing a weekly release schedule. Like I talked about, you lose enthusiasm. At some point, you lose enthusiasm. It's just human. It's human nature. It's not a problem when you're binging it. It's mildly annoying when we're binging it. But going week to week on this shit, like, making people wait 2 months to get back to something, it's just a dick move. But yeah, I mean, like, what do I know? It's just one guy's opinion is all it is. But yeah, this is a good reason. I would have just, right before Saturn showed up would be a good time. You can still achieve this. Also, the other thing about this is, it's interesting you say a relationship with Bonnie. For me, that was Kuma's story. Even though Bonnie was the one experiencing the memories, and it even said Kuma's life, right? We already had a relationship with Kuma, enough of one, I think, for this to work at any point. Now, it's much stronger if we also have a relationship with Bonnie. So, like I said, it's a really good point. I would have just moved it back a few episodes, even one episode, before Saturn shows up, is what I would have done. But, you know. But, yeah, I do think it, like, it could have worked at any point because we already had a relationship with Kuma. And it was interesting because it was a different relationship with Kuma than we now have. These flashbacks give us a different relationship with Kuma. He was always mysterious. He never seemed super assholey, if that makes any sense. Even with what he was doing with Zoro, never seemed like an asshole move. You know, and then sending him away at first felt like an asshole move, but then once I saw where they went, I was like, well, you know, what's this, right? So that made sense. So he always kind of seemed on our side. Then we see him with the Revolutionaries. There's a shot where he's there with them. That was a big plot twist. That started to fill in some pieces, right? But we still now have a different relationship with him than we did before. Also, I don't think I mentioned this. I love the gentle giant trope. You know, a really big dude who's just a nice guy. I always like that, man. They're some of my favorite people. I've known something like that in real life. You know, not everybody big has to be a complete dickhead, you know. As for the hiatus part, the manga didn't really have a hiatus as they were released in chronological order. But I've been told he was sick right around this time, and that he only had 6 issues in 6 months, which I think is usually supposed to be weekly or something like that. So there was a hiatus, right? Like, there was one. It wasn't a planned one, but that's what I was talking about, was not necessarily a planned hiatus. I know that the anime had a planned hiatus. He didn't have one. So, yeah, I'm kind of talking about two things at once here. I'm talking about the showrunners. I know that the anime is following the manga, but the showrunners still had a choice. They could have done it differently. Now, are they going to defy Oda and what he did? No, I wouldn't either. I'm not going to sit here and say I would. And like I said, he was sick. It wasn't a planned hiatus, so it's not like he could plan, okay, well, I'm going to be sick in 2 weeks, so let me go ahead and do these flashbacks now before we get into the next storyline. Nah, I guess not. You can't do that. So, you know, it's fine. I disagree, and it's okay to disagree, because if you don't ever disagree with a genius, then you're just a slobbering fanboy, and slobbering fanboys are annoying. You know, everybody has clay feet. Nobody is perfect. We're all still human beings. And, by the way, I'm older than Oda. He's only 50. You know, so he's a youngin'. Well, I'm not that much older, a few years. I always keep it vague about my age, because I think it's hilarious if people think I'm much older than I am. There have to be people who think I'm in my 60s. You're insane. You are insane if you think but there are people who do. I had a dude who's 1 year younger than me. 1 year younger than me. He looks younger, though, because he's always looked younger. He always looks 10, 15 years younger than he is. But he's actually, in reality, only 1 year younger than me. And the person that hired him for a freelance gig says, it's really nice that your father comes along. She thought I was his goddamn father. Oh, I don't look that effing old, man. Kiss my ass. Power Death, the last comment right now. I'll refresh it, see if there's any more. This was an hour ago. Episode 151 was the first episode where both Kuma and the 5 elders were introduced. I've already done a rewatch of 151. Maybe I need to do another one? Be the only episode in One Piece history I've watched 3 times? To me, I've already said this before, and now each time a new thing happens, this becomes more and more true. It is probably the most pivotal episode, the most pivotal single episode, at least for the first half of the series, maybe for the entire series, because it comes so soon. Yeah, there have been episodes since then that have had more impact. Like, I would argue that the Kuma sending them all away probably had the most plot impact of any single action in the entire series. But for just introducing new comments, isn't that also when the warlords were first mentioned or something? Like, there were so many things that happened in that first 151. I think I'm due for another rewatch. It's been about a year. All right, well, let's get to the other comments. It's crazy. I've gotten 6 hours, I guess. 6 hours ago. The oldest comment is 6 hours old. I've got 16 comments in 6 hours. It's crazy. I love it. I love it. This is HIG. Why the no contact rule? Maybe Saturn was afraid that Kuma would send Bonnie a code via the letters with instructions on how to escape. That's why they wanted Bonnie to remain under their supervision until Kuma's mind is erased, to prevent Bonnie and Kuma from running away together. I knew that part, obviously, right? But it turns out they didn't need to worry about that because Kuma followed the order not to meet and not to run away until the end. He kept his word, and I respect that. They couldn't know that, though. I think you're right. I think that's what it is. I wasn't seeing that. They couldn't take the risk. He's too powerful of an asset, so they had to exert maximum control because, like, there's nobody more afraid than somebody who has power. If you have no power, you have nothing to lose. You ain't afraid of jack shit. I haven't been afraid since Dad died, for a variety of reasons. I think part of it, like his death, just stunted me in some way, damaged my psyche in some way, so I just don't give a shit anymore. I have nothing to lose now. I've lost everything. I have nothing to lose. I have no fear. If I had a bunch of shit to lose, I would have fear, I believe. You know, I believe that's true for anybody, and especially people who have had power for a really long time. I think the longer you've had power, the more the fear accumulates, the more you feel the need to control everything. So these generational power holders, especially like these monarchs, that's why a lot of them are so crazy, right? They just, you know, they've been afraid their entire lives because you have so much to lose. The less you have to lose, the less you're afraid you are. These people have a lot to lose. So they were afraid. They were wrong to be afraid, but they were afraid. But yeah, I think you're right. You're exactly right. That's what it was. They couldn't take the chance he would betray them. They had no way of knowing he wouldn't. So I think you're right. So I don't even know if you want to call it a mistake anymore, but it is a decision I think is going to hurt them badly in the future. Because they unleashed Bonnie in her current form with all this experience, rather than a year or two later if father had been in contact with her. So I've talked about that ad nauseum. I'm not going to go into it again here, but yeah, I just think that it's a bad mistake, but I don't think it's a stupid mistake anymore. I think talking this out has convinced me it made sense from their point of view. They were just wrong. So that's kind of interesting. And that's always some of the best storytelling, you know. There was a woman with CP. This whole thing, man, my memory. I don't even know why you guys put up with me. As soon as you talked about it, I was like, oh yeah, she had the bubble things. She was slippery, right? That was some great shit. It was a long time ago. It was over a year, but like, yeah, that was a great thing. You know, she was all bubbly and slippery and shit. But anyway, he talks about her. There was a woman in CP9 in Water 7. Who was that? It was I'm just gonna call her Kaguya, not Stussy. Kaguya is now part of CP0, and we last saw her at the Reverie when her group kidnapped Vivi, and then Vivi escaped with Walpole. Kaguya has the soap bubble fruit and fought against Nami and Ennis Lobby. Yeah, as soon as you said that, I completely remembered her. It was fan servicey as hell, but it was still great. Stussy was first introduced at Big Mom's Tea Party. I don't remember her there. Also, fun fact about Kaguya was that it was revealed in an SBS that she is Alpha's sister. Now, that is a fun fact. Alpha, as in the fake... I actually remember Alpha. That was only 2 episodes ago. You know. But you're never going to go wrong assuming there's a chance I don't remember something. The fake nurse, CP8, who was in charge of Bonnie after her surgeries. I love all these CP groups. I assume that they're a medical undercover group or some shit. She probably does have medical training. I love that these two are sisters. You've got but I don't think this one. I don't think Alpha has a fruit power that I've seen. If she did, she'd probably be dead because she fell in the ocean, right? So interesting. One does and one doesn't. Door guy. He just says door guy. He's also part of CP0 now, and we saw him at the Reverie last. See, I remembered seeing him. I just couldn't remember where the hell it was. He's got distinctive hair. He's got one of those wild ass hairs. By the way, I still remember because I miss Klaus. Klaus used to, he was the person that got me into this in the first place. He was a patron. He paid me to watch the first 12 to 14 episodes, hoping it would, entertain me enough that I'd do it on my own. But that took a while. I watched the first, you remember if you watched from the beginning, I talked about this. I watched the first 10, 15 episodes. And then, shit happened and, it didn't grab me as much as, the other shit I was doing. But then eventually people talked me into just doing it for the channel and the rest is history. So, But we got to that episode, and I remember I was like, "What the actual hell?" Because they don't explain shit. They just show shit, right? The show don't tell. So they show a guy go like this, and all of a sudden somebody grabs him and opens him up like a door. I was like, "What the hell is going on?" I said, for me at that point, that was too far. And I had a little baby rant about it. Like, it was not me being a baby, just a tiny rant. I had a tiny rant about how stupid that was. It looked goofy. The show is goofy. Like, I had an adverse reaction because it was so funny and so weird and so goofy. Little did I know how much more of these things would happen, right? He just go like this, and a guy opens him up and walks through him like he's a door. I was dying, man. Hilarious, absolutely hilarious. So I always have an affection for this dude because I think back to that fondly when I freaked out. It was so funny, man. It's just the fact that they didn't explain jack shit, they just show it. It was just so good, man. I love Door Guy. Even later, he was pissing me off because he was kicking, I think it's Sanji's ass. He was kicking somebody's ass. But that initial character introduction was so good, man. I love that guy. Too bad Klaus he didn't like anything after the time skip. So it's funny that he got me into this. It's weird, and he's almost like, Kuma in a way. He gets you into it and puts you in a position where you can win. Because me watching this show to the conclusion is winning. Me watching before the show's concluded and I can be spoiled is winning. But he was one of our fallen soldiers. He fell along the way. He fell to the wayside after the time skip because he hates everything after the time skip. I can see where he's coming from. It's a different show after the time skip. And I do miss the show before the time skip. I miss the camaraderie. I miss the focus on the Straw Hats. I miss their interactions. Now everything's about the guest stars and the overall plot, and that's fine. We can always go back and watch the old episodes. I'm going to. And I'm going to enjoy that. But the I can see where somebody's coming from where they just don't want to see anything after the time skip. So he stopped watching. But yeah, pour one out. How did he get these samples? For Miss Buckingham Stussy, I like how it's helpful, by the way, to give the full names. Because at some point, of course, they're going to call her Buckingham, and I won't know the hell they're talking about. It's easy. It was also revealed early in the arc when we checked in on her, Weevil and Marco, that Miss Buckingham Stussy was part of Mads after the Rocks Pirates were disbanded. And that she was Mads freeloader. Yeah, I do remember that now that you mention it. Mads is the illegal organization. Now, check out this roster. Vegapunk, Caesar, Judge. I feel like I should know Judge. I don't remember who they are. Let me just image search Judge. I figured out if I image search rather than just do a search and look at all, there's no chance of spoilers unless they show an image. The first image is them getting their head cut off or something. Probably not going to happen. I've never seen this so much before in my life. Wait. Oh, it's Sanji's father. Okay. Judge. They've never... I'm just kidding. I'm sure they've called him Judge on the show. I just don't remember it. Anyway, here's the roster. Vegapunk, Caesar, Judge, Queen, and the original Stussy. You didn't want to fight these dudes. They're almost as awesome as the Rocks Pirates. So we've got Stussy was part of the Rocks Pirates, and then she became part of Mads, which he had two genius scientists as well, right? Vegapunk and Caesar. Jesus Christ, man. That's like going from, and there's a guy who did this, going from the championship Broncos to the championship Patriots. The Broncos won back-to-back championships in 97 and 98, or 98, 99, something like that. The Patriots started winning championships in 2001. If you went from one team to the other, you stayed winning, man. They're different groups, but they're both awesome. That's a hell of a roster right there. As for the Warlords DNA, we can just assume that when you join the 7 Warlords, you have to provide DNA samples or undergo some sort of physical with the Navy. Yeah, I think I said something like that. And that's what I think happened. I think it was, they had to give samples to join the Warlords, and then you explained how they got Stussy. So, hey, works for me. Those are two solid reasons to send them there. Sanji to Ivanko and Robin to the Revolutionaries. So what about Luffy? Luffy is the only Straw Hat for whom there's no clear reason why Kuma sent him where he sent him. Why did Kuma send him to the Island of Women, Amazon Lily? Surely he couldn't have predicted that Bo Hancock would fall in love with him and smuggle him into the onto a Navy ship to Imperial Down. So, do you have a theory on why he chose Amazon Lily for Luffy? Well, I think I said during the last video, he must have assumed that it was a good match, but probably a reach, but, we don't know. Here's the thing. I think we know everything Kuma knew. Because why would they hold back information now? This was his life. They showed us everything. So it's not like he was getting secret dossiers of these people like I implied last time. I don't think he was. I think he knew what we knew. He must have gone to Amazon Island. They maybe even showed it. I think somebody said they showed every place he sent somebody to. They showed him going there looking for a cure. He must have hit it off with the queen who was giving advice to Bo Hancock, because this would have been several years beforehand, or Bo Hancock herself. Looking for a cure. He's looking for a cure for his daughter. They're women, they're pro women rights and all this stuff, so they would be empathetic to the cause at least. And he's powerful, so they're not just going to try to kill him willy-nilly. I think he probably had a good relationship. Plus, he's a sweet guy. I think they hit it off. This is all headcanon, but I'm just saying. We're looking for a theory here. They must have hit it off. And he must have thought it would somehow benefit Luffy to go there. He knows Luffy. And he's probably hoping that Luffy can rope the Amazon women, maybe not Bo Hancock herself, but the island, and maybe Bo Hancock, into the revolutionary cause somehow. Because were some of the Amazon, wasn't there, I think I'm thinking of the fishmen. The fishmen were prisoners. They got rescued and brought back to Fishman Island. So I was thinking of that. So that didn't happen to the Amazons. They have no beef against the government. But because Luffy is Dragon's son, he must have somehow hoped that Luffy would help. Because again, I don't think it may have always been about helping Luffy and the Straw Hats. Maybe it's also about helping the places he sends them. So that's possible. It's possible motive, but Silver Raleigh, I think the actual reason Silver Raleigh was nearby, wasn't he? Because when does Luffy encounter Silver Raleigh? Is it after Marineford or before Marineford? Does Jimby take Luffy to Silver Raleigh? Because I know Silver Raleigh ends up on the Amazon Island afterwards. Maybe that's what it was. So Silver Raleigh was not affiliated. He wasn't there until afterwards. Okay. So the only thing we can assume is somehow he's probably trying to get the Amazons, who are powerful fighters or a strong force, to the revolutionary side. Talking to Luffy, what kind of person he is. Also, he thinks Luffy's the sun god. So wherever he sends Luffy is going to be vital. It's like sending the chosen one somewhere, right? So you're sending him to a special place. So the only thing I can think of is he's trying to get a powerful group of people to at least get to know, possibly, hopefully befriend, and Luffy is the kind of person who befriends people, gets people on his side everywhere he goes. He makes people laugh everywhere he goes. That's stated in the text. He goes there, they're going to like him. They're going to become friends. And that can only be beneficial to the world. You get a strong force of people who befriend the possible chosen one. I think you can only see benefit there. Now, it worked out better than he could have dreamed. I agree, I don't think that you can foresee everything. But only good things can happen if you take a group of basically decent people. They're a little bit militant, a little bit fundamentalist, but anti-men or whatever. But they're basically good people, and you take a really good person and you throw them in a pot together. You don't know what's going to come out, but something good's going to come out. That's what I think. It's a little loose. It's heavy on the speculation, but I think that I like that a hell of a lot better than he knew that Luffy was going to fall in love with, or Hancock was going to fall in love with Luffy. But I don't think it's impossible to predict that though. She's a naive, sheltered woman who basically has contempt for anybody who's immediately attracted to her, because everybody's immediately attracted to her. And Luffy's the kind of person that isn't really thinking about sex. He's thinking about the job, what he wants to accomplish, what he's got to do. He's trying to get his crew back. So it wouldn't take a genius to assume that somebody who's tired of everybody falling over themselves as soon as they meet her, to assume that kind of person wouldn't be intrigued by a man who doesn't really see her that way. Of course she's going to be. I could predict that, right? Like anybody could. That's not out of the realm of possibility to predict that. If you know her. And she is a warlord and he was a warlord, so he knew her at least a little bit. And maybe, I'm sure him as a warlord had to have spent time with the other warlords. When he first met her, he wasn't interested in her, right? Because he only cares about his daughter and his dead pseudo-wife, right? So he wouldn't be turned on by her. He wouldn't be fawning over her. Where everybody else, like Dolphy, may not be fawning over her either, but he would be making comments like, all this shit, and, hey, let's go, baby, and all this stuff, and the other warlords would be doing that shit. They would, in one way or another, indicate interest in her. And here's Kuma, and he don't give a shit. So it's possible she came on to him. And then he drew the conclusion, she likes people that don't immediately fawn over her. She has contempt for men that are immediately attracted to her. And having known Luffy, at least observe Luffy, know a little bit about him, and probably drag him as the same way, Luffy's not really interested in that kind of shit. So it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility to be like, here's a woman that has contempt for men that are immediately attracted to her, is going to spend time with this guy who is not going to be immediately attracted to her. So you may not necessarily think she wants to marry him, but you would definitely think she'd be interested in him, interested in getting to know him, strike up a friendship, which could be mutually beneficial. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. How everything exactly played out, he could rope her into the, smuggle him into prison and shit. No, nobody can predict that, but, you don't need to. You can just assume good things will happen. So, that's my theory. That's what I think. The title is perfect, Kuma's Life. The title is the same as the manga chapter. Typically, the anime has to do its own titles. They spoil the episodes. Separate from the manga. While the manga tries to be more vague, concise, and ambiguous. But this time they kept the same title. And they should have. That was a really good title. Also, HIG. What would Vegapunk do with Kuma's memories? This was addressed early in the arc when Bonnie first entered the Kuma memory room. Vegapunk flashes back to a conversation he had with Kuma in the lab. They just don't replay that scene a second time in this flashback because the anime is trying to follow the manga more closely in terms of pacing now. Vegapunk saw that Kuma's power allowed him to store pain in paw bubbles. And since pain is just signals from nerve cells, he wonders if Kuma's power can also be applied to any mental neurological process. So Vegapunk wanted Kuma to produce memories using his powers and give them tangible form so he could measure the weight and volume of mental images, which he also refers to as the soul. That conversation was in episode 1104. The funny thing is 1104 is dropping tomorrow. So I like the symmetry of that on public YouTube. That's why he talks about it as research materials in this episode. Kuma giving Vegapunk a copy of his memories has nothing to do with the fact that his own mind getting erased. Yeah, that makes sense. The two are unrelated. Obviously, they're related thematically and metaphorically. Although, one could assume, as you did, that perhaps if Vegapunk is able to study these memories from a distance without touching the paw bubble, he could have downloaded Kuma's memories and stored them in digital form on his computers. And I think he did, by the way. Or added them to his own brain, Punk Records. And in that case, maybe a mind upload could be possible where Kuma's consciousness gets to live on a different body robot or even in the original Kuma, if his brain can be somehow be saved. Yeah, I mean, that all makes sense. And thanks for reminding me of the previous scene. The thing is, by the way, this is just a sidetrack here. Every time I see Punk Records, see, I'm old enough to remember that records used to be how music came out, right? Before CDs and downloadable, MP3s or whatever. I know I'm old. back in my day, you would see something like Atari Records. You'd be walking down the street in Los Angeles, and there would be a building that would take up an entire city block. And it would say something like Atari Records or Generation Records or whatever, RCA Records, some shit like that. And you'd go in there, and it'd be this massive inside sales space, which would have rows and rows of records. I did this once. I was visiting LA back in probably the 90s, I think it was. I remember walking down the street. It could have been Hollywood and Vine or something, and it was like half a city block was this building. And they have floor-to-ceiling windows that are tinted, and then they have a bunch of reproduction of album covers on each window. So there'd be like 10 windows on one side and 10 windows on the other side. It'd be a corner building, right? 10 windows on one side, 10 windows on the other side. Record album covers would be in each one of them. And then you have the door, right? And you go in there, and there's just vinyl records as far as the eye can see, right? Just shelves and shelves and shelves of them. Probably 10,000 different albums were in there. And that was the thing. So that's why every time I see punk records, obviously he's talking about digital records. Every time I see punk records, I'm thinking that that's like the biggest collection of albums we've ever seen. They've got Megadeth and Southern Comfort, AC/DC and Elvis and Conway Twitty and just every album you can think of, right? Just in there. I can smell the vinyl from here. Every time he says, I see punk records, that's what I think. Obviously, that's not what they're doing here. But that's what it looks like. It looks like this big place where they can sell a bunch of albums, We're up to Matakoye. I wouldn't mind if you saw the Barati arc in One Piece. It is very short. It's something fun to do. Yeah, I'm thinking about it. I think the first thing I'm going to do besides 151 is Thriller Bark. I think that's what I'm going to do. The more I think about I miss the pre-time skip stuff. And I think that's close up to time skip. You get all the good stuff. You get all the... Because I think, he has a conversation with Silver Raleigh and shit at Bubble Island that happens after that, and that's where they first meet Brooke, and so there's a lot of good shit, and you can get to the time skip and then Marineford. I might go all the way up through the end of Marineford and then figure out what I'm going to do from there, but that's the plan for now. We'll see how it goes. What is Axeboy doing here? We're back to HIG. He's bowed his head because he knows that today is the day that Kuma's mind is being erased. And he's outside the lab saying a prayer or paying his respect or something of that nature. Yeah, here's the thing. I don't think this works for me. And I think this is another case where the manga is superior. Because in the manga, you can just show one panel. And then we can linger on the panel as long as we want to. They were such quick shots in the anime, they almost don't mean anything. But also, there's no companion shots. There's no shot of Stussy. And I don't know who else there could be. But the rule of three is a really big deal here. You've just got one guy who's outside there now. If you had one more person, you could have Vegapunk who's impacted by this. You'd have Axeboy who's impacted by it. And then maybe Stussy, maybe she wouldn't be impacted. That's why he didn't do it. But somebody else, it's just one other random guy out there who I don't know that has ever had a scene with Kuma, maybe in passing. Now I know that Axeboy was really close to Bonnie. Axeboy had a lot of scenes with Bonnie, so I guess by proxy you can say he cares about Kuma. We get that. But I can only remember one or two conversations between the two of them. It's very brief. Mostly he spent his time with Bonnie. Now, in real life, three-dimensional space where they have 24-hour days and we're not just seeing little snippets of their life, they probably had lunch together. They probably had conversations together. They talked about Bonnie. Maybe she's taking a nap, and they're just talking about Bonnie. They probably did spend a lot of time together, and he probably does care. He probably does care for Kuma. I think it's reasonable to assume that. We just didn't see it. But the more I think about it, I wasn't really thinking about all the time he spent with Bonnie. It makes more sense the more I think about it. But I think this is something that the impact is better in the manga because you can linger on that panel as long as you want to. In the anime, it was two quick shots. Boom, and then they're on to something else. So, I don't know. I think that's one case where you have a translation issue. Back to Matakoye. What's funny about your Brooke theory for sending him to help people is that what he ended up doing is forcing them to show him their underwear. And eventually losing against the people who were attacking them. He was then held prisoner by the attackers, which is where he had begun to perform his music. The only reason he got back to the crew is because he wasn't strong enough to help those people, which would be pretty funny since Kuma expected the opposite, according to your theory. Yeah, here's the thing. I don't think it's a good thing when everybody's plans always work in fiction. You know, I love it when it's like, here's my plan and here's where it went wrong. Actual human relationships have fallibility. Human plans have fallibility. Right? Like, you don't, like, this was my plan. But sometimes people act like in fiction a plan is only matters and is only relevant to the plot if it works. You know, and I don't think that's true. I think it's just as important to show your character's plan failing as showing their plan succeed. So I just want to know what his plan was. Like, for instance, I don't think his plan with Luffy actually worked out the way he thought it would, but he was probably open to anything to happen because he figured there's only good possible results there, right? So I don't know the specific plan. I do think he sent Brook there to help those people. I just think that Brook wasn't capable of it. I think it was a plan that went awry. So it worked out. But unless we're saying that Kuma's omnipotent and he knows everything and he's infallible, like he's a Death Note character, unless we're saying that, it's good that at least one of his plans didn't work. And this is, I know it's just my theory, but I like the idea that, like, he failed at least, you know, because what if we just had one of these characters? Like, say Usopp had died at that island, he just wasn't strong enough to survive. It was a good plan, it should have worked, it just didn't because Usopp slipped up and died. It was still a good plan. You know, it was the right thing to do. And Usopp did survive. But Kuma had no control over that. He just gave Usopp a chance to grow. That's all you can ask. And if he didn't survive that island, he probably wasn't strong enough to help the Straw Hats anyway. So, for me, I like that this was, for me, I like the theory that, like, it was a plan that didn't work, but it still worked out, right? So that's how I see it. Now we're on to Power of Death. Bonnie has been super, super sheltered. Yeah, that does make sense. I hadn't really thought about the sheltered aspect of her life. Because she wasn't allowed to go outside. Probably very similar to kids growing up during COVID-19 who weren't allowed to go out and play. Yeah, I talked about Alex on one of these things. You know, I think it was the last episode where I talked about that. She was one of those. I think she was, well, she's 9 now, and that was 5 years ago. So, yeah, she was 4 or 5 when it happened. About ready to go to, she missed a year of school, I think. So that's had a big impact on her. She'll be one of these old women in 50, 60 years who is still doing, washing her hands, you know, back when they've cured all these diseases and you don't need to wash your hands anymore. Unless you literally shit on them, you don't have to wash your hands anymore, like all diseases have been cured. She'll still be the one washing her hands because she was programmed to do that as a kid. My grandmother collected styrofoam boxes because you never know when you need them. Like, I'm talking about, like, McDonald's. She would wash them out and save them. McDonald's styrofoam boxes, you never know when you'd need them. She died, we ended up throwing them all away. Like, they were never used. But it was, she grew up in the Great Depression. You didn't throw anything away. You saved everything because you might need some of this shit. You might need plates, you know? So she just grew up in the Great Depression. So the demic, I probably shouldn't say some of these other buzzwords. The demic just scarred a generation of young people in a way we won't really see for 20, 30, 40 years. Just the way the Great Depression did. The Great Depression scarred an entire generation of people that became old people who became annoying to young people. Hoarders. It created a generation of hoarders. I think the demic will create a generation of hand washers. There could be worse things. At least you're not making your family, as happened to us, throw away all that crap. So, you know. Madakoya. I believe Bonnie's powers work based on her conception of what it is she's transforming into. This is a very interesting theory. I'm going to read it out, but I think this is very interesting here. Like with the Nika-ish future that she used on the nurse lady agent, didn't look exactly like Nika even though she was still able to do it, because she doesn't know what Nika looks like. So she doesn't know about things that the women get during puberty that aren't outwardly, because she clearly gets the physical look right. I doubt she'd be able to learn to deal with them, because how could she get it in the first place if she doesn't know it exists? Yeah, I don't know. This is a great theory. And it fits the text, which is what makes a great theory. And I don't know, like, if you're a manga reader, if you have more information or anything. But with what I know, I'm not sure I like it. We're getting into the area of Neo in the Matrix, where we've got people able to warp reality without consequences. And you're going to reach a point where just nothing matters, and so what if it did, right? Like, it's just like you can just do anything, man. You can stop time, and, I'm watching JoJo where that happened, but, like, you can stop time, you can eat the sun, you're unkillable, I don't know, man. Like, it's just, if this is the way it works, you do have the flaw of you can only do what you can imagine. And there's some severe limitations to some people's imaginations. Because I haven't had the conversation yet about the devil fruits and the fact that they can be created by desires and stuff. That's a long conversation worth having. I haven't had it yet. Plastic Thesis, whatever his name is, has asked me to have that conversation. I'm going to. I'm waiting for the right venue. This is already going to be a long video. But that's kind of the same issue. Again, if you can dream it, you can do it. If you can imagine it, it can happen. It would be very interesting. I just don't know if I like it. I think it could be overpowered. I prefer the idea that she's the yin to Luffy's yang, in that they're paired up fruits. They're natural allies. They're sibling fruits in a way. He has a little bit of ability to age, but a lot of rubber ability. She has a little bit of rubber ability and a lot of ability to age. They're kind of like they pair nicely together. I like that idea, rather than she can just imagine any power she wants or anything she wants and just be that temporarily. I don't know. But it is a fascinating theory. So, if it is just a theory, I'm not sure I'm on board. But if you're informed by the manga and this is just a reality of the situation, then I'm not sure I like it, but we'll just have to see how it plays out. But it would explain what I was talking about, though, as far as chemicals and purity and stuff. So, also, even though it was a whole year she spent not getting letters in the church, it was another 6 months till Kuma got fully transformed. Hence, him wishing her a happy 10th birthday. And since she is now 12, she hasn't seen from or heard from Kuma in 3 years. And for a 12-year-old, that's a huge amount of time. That's like 1/4 of her life. That's 25% of her life. So that makes the trauma even worse, right? That is some shit, man. That is can be loosely defined as some shit. That's a lot. Finally, from Madakora is another thing about Bonnie's doubts. The whole reason she came to Eggland in the present was because she was really mad at Vegapunk. She didn't trust him at all. Clearly, it had gotten to her. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I don't trust him either. She's right not to trust him. But I think they have come to an understanding. The memories probably helped a lot. I'm sure she trusts him now. I don't, and I wouldn't. And the last comment for now, I'm going to refresh to make sure, is from Power Death. Bonnie received a lifetime worth of trauma in just a day as a 12-year-old. That's insane. That's crazy. She's 12. I could barely dress myself at 12. I sure as hell wasn't going to be able to take on a lifetime of adult-ass trauma, man. That is crazy. But it wasn't just trauma, though. It wasn't just trauma. It was closure, and it was finding out for a fact her dad loved her, and that him not writing her had nothing to do with his feelings for her. So, I think it was more good than bad, these memories. This day of trauma was more good than bad. I think it helped her. I think it was a good thing. She benefited from this, and she didn't seem devastated and wrecked later on. She seemed angry and she wants to get revenge, and she went straight for Saturn, even though he's much more powerful than her. So she was invigorated and re-energized. I think it was a massive net benefit to access those memories. Like, yeah, she got some trauma, but she was the last thing he was thinking about. She's the only thing he thought about for most of his life. He loved her all the way. Everything he did was for her. That's gotta feel good, because like I've said, I had a lot of trauma resulting from Dad's death, but I know for a fact he loved me and he would have done anything for me, and that means something, and I carry that with me. So I've talked about how I've never been lucky in romantic love, but I've had a kind of love a lot of people who have had very successful romantic relationships have never had, which is I have been unconditionally loved by another human being, and that's something that you keep with you for all your life once you've experienced it. You know, like any parent who's had a kid feels that the kid loves them unconditionally. They love the kid unconditionally. So a lot of you know what I'm talking about here. I won't have kids, but I had that with a parent. And so, however traumatic his death was, I still have, it's a net positive to like all my time with it. Because some people will be like, you know, the trauma of losing him is I'd rather have not known him at all, like the eternal sunshine and spotless mind kind of thing. I don't think so. I think it's a net benefit. However bad it is at the end, even if it's just a bad breakup, the good times were better than the breakup, in my opinion. Like, you had those good times. That's something you can carry with you. So in her specific case, she got closure. She found out for sure he loved her. She found out exactly what happened, what he was thinking the whole time, and it was always about her. And he was, he did everything for her. He's a lying bastard, but at least it was for her benefit. So I think that's a net positive. I really do. All right, let me see if there's any other questions now. Nope, no more. So, time to get into the episode. Alright, here we go with the rewind for episode 1137, and we start off with the creepy cat. F this creepy cat. Look at this sumbitch. Look at that uncanny valley, shitty CGI, plastic looking, creepy ass cat. I know he's supposed to be Puss in Boots. That's the worst Puss in Boots I've ever seen in my life. Dude, you have the fashion sense of a toenail. Look at this, man. You're gonna fly out in our face and shit. You ain't magic. Stay in orbit. Hate that son of a bitch, man. Just saying. That's a bow tie only a mother can love. And cat mothers have 8 kids, so they don't have love for all of them. Believe that shit. Okay, so I just love the whole aesthetic of this episode. We start off with the flashbacks, and I'm not gonna rewatch because I've seen these scenes like a dozen times now. But I love the aesthetic, though. For people aren't doing the rewatches and reactions and all this shit like me, I'm sure it's fine. But the aesthetic of this, instead of opening credits, perfection. This is how you use your runtime, man. Instead of 90 seconds of a theme song and then 2 minutes of flashing back to the previous episode, can we just have like the 90 seconds, instead of a theme song, we get 90 seconds of what previously happened that you feel like is important for us to know for this episode with some music under it? And then we get into the episode so we can get an extra 2 minutes of story? Thank you. Then we get like her coming out of the memory room. He's just waiting there for her. And I love that she turns back into herself. I was going to say she turns back into a little girl, but she turns back into herself. The trauma, and I talked about this in the Q&A. It's not really trauma. I think there was more release and more closure and more net positive in this than just trauma. But there is the trauma side of it, And so she just went back to herself to kind of as a comfort thing, I think. I like it. He asked, did you see everything? And I'm wondering, how long do you think this took? The mind processes much faster than we can talk. Like, I'm thinking faster than I talk. You're thinking at the same time you're listening because the processing speed of the brain is just incredible. And then, like, when we dream, they've proven, like, when you dream, a minute in a dream is like an hour, or a minute outside. Your dream lasts for a minute, but it feels like it takes hours. I said that wrong, but you know what I mean. You've seen that before. So she could absorb and process all of these memories within the space of just a few minutes, but it was in a lifetime. Now, we say lifetime, but there could be 2 weeks of him sailing from one place to another if he's taking a ship. Literally nothing happened. He wrote letters, he read books, he talked to people, maybe he worked out. You skip all that. He didn't include those memories. So, like, it was a lifetime, but, like, it was a lifetime of highlights, really. I think she was probably only there for about 10 minutes. And 9 minutes of that was crying. This is a great shot, by the way. I like the way this is framed. And he's a tall dude. I guess I didn't realize how tall he was. Because she's not a little girl yet. I guess he promised Kuma never to show his daughter the memories? Is that what the promise was? Because why? I guess he just made the memories for research purposes only. I guess I kind of didn't clock the whole detail here. These memories were just for research. I've actually said before, and I've been thinking the whole time, he made the set of memories for Bonnie and for the research. Like, you can research these. One day you run up against Bonnie, show her the memories. So, I guess that's not the case. It was just for research, and he promised never to let Bonnie see these. I have a vague memory of that conversation taking place. So, I guess that's promising, Brooke. Then there's this long fake out that she's going to kill him, and clearly she was just going to hug him. You know, that's my favorite shot right here of that. The hands up, because everybody goes in for a hug with their hands up at your neck, right? You know, like this is how I hug. My hug is my hands are up at your neck, and then I end up putting my hands around your back, but they start going towards your neck, kind of like a mummy, you know, like that. That's how I try to hug, you know, when you want to fake the audience out. I'm sorry, Dad. Bonnie's tears and Kuma's fist. Yep. That pretty much tells you if you read the manga, you know exactly what's going to transpire in this episode. Yeah, there's a hand at work here. I don't know if it's fate. I don't know if it's a dead god that persists, or a living god arranging things. But there's definitely, you know, sometimes just people are drawn together by fate, that kind of thing. I love that kind of storytelling. Yeah, sometimes things just happen. You know, it could just be a coincidence. Don't mistake coincidence for fate, right? But the fact that these two arrived together, as he comments on in a minute, is just, it's very interesting. I think they are drawn together. Yes, I was surprised when you two arrived here together. I'm sure he was. But he kept that close to the vest, didn't he? After you went into that room, so much has happened on Eggland. Wait, are we saying like a lot of shit transpired after she went in there? Was she in there for a lot longer than I thought? Maybe it took... They must be saying it takes a long time to get those memories. And then after that, then she sat there. She could have sat there for hours just processing what she experienced. I was just saved by Straw Hat Loopy and his crew. So, I guess what we're saying is, she goes into the room. He waits out here, gets kidnapped by evil Vegapunk. All that shit happens. Gets rescued by the Straw Hats. They have their entire ass conversation in the control room. And then, I'm not sure exactly when he left and what was transpiring there. And then he comes back down and he waits for her some more. So, yeah, it wasn't just 10 minutes. She's been in there for a while. Okay. Okay, this is him telling everything. Yeah, the Seraphim, whatever, are attacking him. I love that he's demonstrating with his hands. She's watching with enraptured. And then this shit in the background is what he's saying. This is really cool. I love this a lot. He is talking, man. I'm sure in the manga, it's exactly like that. It's just, you know, they don't have words. We just see it was probably panels just exactly like that. Okay, a few things here. First, let's talk about his character design. Awesome. The horns are particularly good. And then all these, like, he's not really a spider, because I think spiders have 8 legs, right? And he has 6. So, it's also interesting he calls people insects when he has an insect form. That's just to demonstrate the hypocrisy, right? Like, obviously he's much bigger than insect. And when he says insects, it's a metaphor, not literal. But he then has imagery that evokes, like, he's an insect, but he's calling it. So, like, it really just is coded to... You're supposed to think of him as a hypocrite. Yeah, that's what that is. It's all, like, layered in there, right? So we've got that going on. Then he's holding her up and he's squeezing her. And I think there's a couple things going on here. At first, until he tried to kill her with one to pinch her at the very end of the episode, I thought there was, like, some rule in place where he couldn't kill her. Maybe he can't kill anybody. I didn't know. Because, like, there's unspoken rules in some of these shows. And then they don't do something. Like in Vampire Diaries, this guy doesn't kill this one character. There's only one character he won't kill. And you don't know why. You don't even really think about it. Just, he leaves her alive several times. And the other characters notice, like, wait a minute, why would he leave her alive? Well, it turns out when she dies, he dies, right? So that's why he left her alive. And in Lost, there was unspoken rules. Certain characters weren't allowed to kill each other. They just weren't. They couldn't do it. If they tried, it wouldn't work. They weren't allowed to. and those are unspoken rules. So, in my mind, I'm kind of in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, is there an unspoken rule that he can't kill people? Because he's got her in his hand. He can just close his fist and she's dead. Like, it takes more effort to tell people to shoot her than it does to close your fist. And yet, he tells them to shoot her rather than closing his fist. So I thought there could be, like, he wouldn't be able to kill her. Well, come to find out that's not true. He can kill her because he tried to with the pincher. Like, so why hold her up and tell them to shoot her? So I think that he enjoys, he takes some kind of sadistic pleasure in making other people do that kind of shit. These small fries he has no respect for. He thinks they're insects just like she is. Let's let the insects kill each other. You're not even worthy of me killing you. I think it's something like that. Like, he's so far above her, he doesn't want to lower himself to actually have to kill her himself. I think it's something like that. Just trying to figure out the motivation. And then, of course, it's the old convention. Author doesn't want her to die, so he's not going to kill her. So we spend the whole episode waiting around while he holds her in his hand, right? So there's that. That's not really an interesting conversation. You know, the author isn't making it too obvious. You have a bunch of distractions, like, oh, I'm about to kill her, oh, somebody distracted me. Oh, I'm about to kill her, oh, somebody distracted me. They did that pretty good, right? Like, people shouting out, and he gets distracted. He gets hit in the back with one of the energy beams. The author did that pretty good. Like, he doesn't want her to die in this episode, so she doesn't. But it wasn't too obvious. I noticed it. But then the other thing is, he does seem to be a sadist, like, just down to his core. So he enjoys playing with this food. He enjoys torture, and he does it. If she's dead, their fun is over, right? So there's a certain, like, when you're so much stronger than somebody else, it doesn't matter when you kill them. Like, it's not like they can get away, right? In your mind, anyway. So you're not going to be in a hurry if you torture people, which he does, clearly. So I think it works for his character, is what I'm saying. It all works. This is all poetry here. Yeah, like, they can't move, and they don't know why they can't move. He's like, and even Vegapunk's like, I don't know, it might be his power, or it could just be his aura. He's out here aura farming. He's been aura farming for 10 episodes during the flashback, right? He's got plenty of aura to play with. And yeah, you must have some kind of power preventing them from moving, clearly. So look at this shot back here. There is no food in sight, so I don't know where he got the food, and they haven't told us where he got the food. They even bring it up. Where did he get the food? That'll be revealed at some point. But this shot here reveals there is no food around him within range. Somehow it comes to him. This is the ugliest shot in the entire series. Stop it with this shit. I don't want to see this. This is repulsive. I like that, they mentioned the Axe Boy got captured. He's still, speaking of laid out. By the way, remember how I was calling for, look, can we see the villains be weak sometimes? They run out of energy. They get their ass kicked to such an extent until they get fed that they just have to lay here. That's pretty much him. Because he seems to have recovered from his facial reconstruction surgery, but he's still not moving. So I think it's like he got his ass kicked, and so he needs food or whatever regenerates him before he can be back in the action, right? So this is a case where a villain, or at least an antagonist, suffers the same consequences that the heroes do, which I like to see. I'm glad that they did that. But yeah, he's like, hey, they got my nephew. Nephew. This is interesting. He's like, Jewelry Bonnie, your father Kuma is dead. Watch what happens after he says is dead. It's an explosion, right? That's some clever shit, considering what he says at the end of the episode. We think at the time he means Kuma's dead because his mind was taken over. We saw that last episode, right? That's what he thinks he's talking about. He means literally, not just figuratively. And that little energy burst isn't just, hey, let's be dramatic because I said somebody's dead. It is literally representing what he thinks happened, that he blew up, right? So here they say, anyone below the rank of Commodore can't go in, so we're in the dark. But we see people standing around the island. Now, maybe the southern end where Kuma lands, so it's pretty far away. But there's even people right there with the rifles that are supposed to shoot Bonnie. Are they Commodores and above? They must be, right? They must be, I guess. The newly declared Emperor of the Sea is now taken hostage. Well, evil people do evil things, right? Have we ever seen these people before? I feel like a head like that I would recognize. With it being snowy, is this where Robin landed? Because that was a snowy place. But then also the island where Frankie landed was also a snowy place. There's something vaguely familiar about them big ass lips and that egg ass head. There's some weirdos in this place, man. Nice snowman back there. This guy also looks familiar. I like the O'Hara mention, by the way. It says the island is more heavily surrounded than O'Hara, which, of course, they destroyed. So maybe they'll level Eggland as well. Which there's a reason why they evacuated all the people. For instance, in Buffy season 7, they evacuated Sunnydale. We find out why they evacuated Sunnydale at the end of the series, but that had to be, that was a plot point. I think it was like episode 2 or 3 episodes before the end. They did it early so that they could do something later, right? And same here. Like, they evacuate Eggland. I think Eggland is going to be leveled. It's going to be completely destroyed. All that work for nothing. So is he just impressing women? I'm hearing women go, ooh. But it felt like there was a couple dudes there, but I'm not sure. Maybe all women. So he's just showing off for the women, okay. Look at him. They're like, we want to see it again. He's like, all right, I guess it can't be helped. You greedy boys and girls, this ought to satisfy you. Jesus. So there are some boys there too, okay. Meanwhile, Dragon's like, man, I ain't got time for this shit. But Ivan's liking it. They just showed Ivan giggling, right? Ivan's into it. If Kuma is being driven by a fragment of his natural instinct, they heavily foreshadowed he was coming to the island. I missed it. When something landed, I'd never guessed Kuma. I don't know why. I should have. It was obvious. I don't know who I thought it was. I really didn't have a guess. I still don't have an alternate guess who else it could have been. Because here's the thing, though. Vegapunk has helped a lot of people over the years. He's a scientist. Surely he has, right? There's people he's cured, people he's given augmentations to, people he's just given shit to. He's formed relationships all over the world. You would think some people would come to Eggland to help him in a time like this. But that also means fighting the Navy. So would they? I guess not. But you think there'd be a couple powerful people out there that might be like, I guess I'll go help Vegapunk. F the Navy anyway. So, if anything, I guess I was thinking that. Where do you think you would go? Yeah, like, it was right here, man. Like, why wouldn't I have thought of Kuma? I just didn't. I don't know why. And I think Ivan here is going to make the correct guess. I think he'd go to his daughter, or I think he'd go to Eggland, but is interrupted, right? Just to not spoil the surprise for the dumbasses like me who couldn't figure it out ahead of time. This is a cold-ass line, by the way. Why don't you go meet your father in the afterlife? To which I would say, you're holding her in your hand, what's stopping you? Well, we've talked about that. But yeah, that's a cold line. This is interesting by Sanji. Stop it, you fool. Why does Sanji think he's a fool? Is he a fool because it'd be foolish to kill a woman? Or is he a fool because there's something that he might need from Bonnie? Nah, that's thinking too deep. He thinks you're a fool because you want to hurt a woman. That's that simple. There's no depth there. I mentioned this before in your reaction, but his nails are great. It's just more insect quality, right? The insectal nails, for sure. Here's the interesting thing about this, okay? I like how he reacted, she said Nika. But her attack fails. And he claims that she's losing her power because he gave her the power in the first place. The hell does that mean? Are we talking about, is he speaking a metaphor, which is what I think is going on? Or does his power have the ability to drain fruit powers? Or just drain energy from people? Maybe that's why they can't move. Or he has more than one power, right? Because we don't know what's coming from his aura. Maybe they can't move. The Emperor's Haki thing, Conqueror's Haki, you can't move because of the Haki. But then there's also fruit power. I don't know, but he gave her the power, but that's a fruit power. So if I hand you a fruit and you eat it, does that mean I can take your power away? I don't think so. So I'm not sure where he's going with that. But then if that's true, if he can take your power away because he gave it to you in the first place, why would he say, what was that? Was that an attack? I think he's mocking her. He's making fun of her. Because he loves tormenting her in every way you can, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally as well, right? That's why he brought up her father, and hey, why don't you go see him in the afterlife and shit? Like, he is messing with her. This is another really good shot. I love we got the lamb there looking on like holy shit, and then the rest of them are the small fries. And then in the foreground we got that clenched fist with her in it. This is a really good shot. Another great. Another one I would hang on the wall, right? Now this is also interesting. You know the name, but you don't know what it is. What it is, not who it is. It's not who it is. It's not what he is or what she is. It's what it is. So there's more here, right? He's hinting at stuff like Nika may be an alien, or Nika may be a god, or like the Endless, which is I'm starting to wonder if we're going the path of Sandman here, which is where the deities are created by the people. They're created by the power of belief. Maybe Nika went away back in the day 800 years ago because people stopped believing in revolution, stopped believing in resistance. And now 800 years of oppression, of the feeling of wanting to rebel and feeling resistance, and the pirate age specifically, all the rebellion that comes with piracy, has brought back the spirit of rebellion and brought back the entity of Nika. That kind of thing, because I'm starting to feel like we're more and more into that kind of a show. Like the power of belief is everything, right? So, because he even mentions it in this episode, you don't believe in Nika, you lose your power, Luffy's always going to believe, so he's always going to have access to that power. Very interesting. Apparently she hasn't made the connection between Nika and Straw Hat's white appearance yet. Yeah, I mean, that's an obvious sentence. We can pretty much figure out what that means. He is a representation of Nika. He believes fully. Now, why is it a shame that she hasn't made the connection? He's thinking this, by the way. This isn't making fun of anybody. It's in his head. He's like, well, maybe it's from the point of view of, I thought she was smarter than this. Okay, so here he's eating. Very thoughtful, by the way, put some cups of soda or juice or whatever with the straws in place. And some fries and just a random raw tomato, a carton of probably milk, and a bunch of meat, of course, and just fully formed hamburgers with tomatoes on them, cheese. This is an elaborate ass meal. Like, there's some thought went into this. So I'm thinking somebody got this from one of those vending machines that gives you food, right? Because like the full hamburgers, for instance. That's what I'm thinking. And then the sodas look like they come from a fast food place. Oh, look at that chili dog. Or no, it's just a dog with mustard and ketchup. Okay. I'd rather have a chili dog. And then this hamburger down there has lettuce on instead of tomatoes. So, look, they got this from a vending machine, I think. And this is the question of the day. Who gave him food? That's a lot of food. There's a pizza back there. This is a lot of food. So, somebody did this. And it's going to be interesting to find out who it was. I don't have any theories at this point. Who are we not seeing? Robin. It was probably Robin. Because Robin has the ability to just have a bunch of hands, like, turn on the vending machine, press all the buttons, grab the shit and bring them over to him. And it's not like a huge ass person lumbering around holding shit. It's a bunch of hands near the ground. It must have been Robin who did it. Do we know where she is right now? What she's doing? I don't think so. So I think it was Robin did it. Put C Prism Stone cuffs on him immediately. Now, if it is Robin, Robin must have taken care of the soldiers. Because we don't see him get taken into custody. Now, he may have been off screen, but we don't see it. You seem to be wondering why your power is waning. The power of yours is something I gave you. This isn't an answer to the question why her power is waning. Like, I don't know, man. The power of yours is something I gave you. I just realized what we're seeing here is Kuma arriving. He's going through the water, right? Above the water, but like he's going so fast, it's creating a wake. I wondered at the time, I was like, why are we seeing this while he's talking? This is just foreshadowing Kuma arriving. Okay. Look at him, a younger man. I don't think so, though. This doesn't track. Because when what was the place where the Rocks pirates met their end? We saw Saturn there, and he looked like he does now. But here, in between, because this was just 10 years ago, and the Rocks pirates thing was like over 20 years ago, I think. It was when Kuma was a boy, right? He looked the same age those two times, but here he looks different. He looks skinnier and taller, If we gave an infant who couldn't eat solid fruit power with a fruit extract, and they did, so it works. It was a success, but the fruit itself is worthless. The power allows you to transform into any possible future version of yourself, so it's not really like aging back and forth. You're transforming. Basically, it is imagination. This must have been what somebody was talking about in the comments. Like, it's what you imagine. You're not actually aging up or aging down. It's what you imagine. A possible future version of yourself. But the more you know of reality, the narrower your potential group becomes. But there are people who are never confined by reality. Their minds wander their entire lives. Picasso is one of those. There's other people. Some of these, the biggest geniuses we can think of, Leonardo da Vinci, they're never constrained by maturity and growing up and reality and laws and whatever. Like, they roam free. Those people could use this fruit to the fullest potential of it. No pun intended. This is a great image here. Especially considering how much like an insect he is. I know spiders aren't insects. Argue with your mother. Same goddamn thing. This is a great image, though. Like, she's confined by her lack of imagination, essentially, is what he's saying. I saw her say Nico's real, but then I missed these next two lines. Ever since my father was turned into a cyborg to serve you, I've been searching for him, hoping he'll free my father. Now, I knew this information. I just didn't see these lines of dialogue. She believes with all her heart that Nico's real, but he seems to think she's not believing that as much anymore. Maybe because she never found him. Because he says, your weakening is proof that you are starting to believe Nico's not real. So it's just the power of belief. Here's the trap that he has created for himself. A very logical person would see through this. If, as you posit, my belief is what fuels my power, then you are sitting here trying to convince me that Nika's not real. In one breath, you say your weakening power is proof that you're starting to not believe he's real. Oh, by the way, he's not real. Your father also believed this ridiculous Buccaneer legend. Okay? Now, it doesn't even matter if Nika's real or not. Here's what's been stated. The more you believe in Nika, the stronger you are. And, oh, this is bullshit. You shouldn't believe in him. It's crap. It's a fairy tale. Like, do you see the contradiction here? He's just told you the more you believe, whether or not he's actually real, all that matters is if you believe he's real. If you believe he's real, your power gets stronger. If you don't believe he's real, you get weaker. Oh, but he's not real. It's a ridiculous Buccaneer legend. He's not real. Do you see the game here? It's obvious, like, he literally he snitched on himself. He set the trap for himself and then walked right into it. If you want her to be weak because The less she believes in Nika, the weaker she is. Don't tell her that. Just tell her, oh, you believe in Nika? That's stupid. That's a fairy tale. This son of a bitch literally told her you're getting weaker because your belief in Nika's getting weaker. Oh, by the way, Nika's not real. You got to be shitting me. Boy, the more, because he spends the next few minutes like stronger and stronger trying to convince her that he's not real. Because that makes her weaker. Wow. I didn't even catch that the first time. Which is why she doesn't catch it. This is all happening fast, right? But upon analysis, it's obvious as hell. Again, the arrogance of anime characters. Let me tell you all the information that you need to destroy me. I'll just give it to you for free. There was no reason for him to tell her that the more or less you believe in Nika determines how much power you have. That was unnecessary. This was another good, interesting revelation. He conducted drug experiments, so he's been doing this for who knows how many people, right? He's been conducting drug experiments on the mother, and that's what gave her the disease. And then the disease got inherited. The 8th wife of someone from the Holy Land. They're being very coy about who this is. It's always just some celestial dragon. A name is never mentioned. So this is going to come into play at some point. And as he talks to her, of course, they're showing the constricting, confining webs getting stronger because his words are having the effect of making her believe less, right? It's right there. And here he comes. Look at him. The power bubble around him is way bigger than he is, but you can see him in there. I like how angry he is here that this is your experiment. He clearly has moral guidelines. He has railroad tracks he follows for like how he does experiments. He has no problem experimenting on himself. I mean, he cut his own head off, right? But I don't think he would experiment on other people. I think you'd only do something to other people if he knew what the result would be. And it'd be a humane result. Or he needs to stay good with the government and then he could turn somebody's brain off. That, I still have a problem with him doing that. But otherwise, generally speaking, he's not going to do shit just to do shit. We hear about the German experiments during World War II. They were just doing shit to do shit. Hey, let's see what happens if this happens. That's not typically the way research works. That's not typically the way experiments work. Typically, you have a theory and you're trying to either prove it or disprove it. You're either one. Like you're trying to do both. You either improve your theory or disprove it, and you get progression. You don't just do shit to do it. Hey, I wonder if we hold somebody's head underwater for what if we hold their head in Gatorade instead of water? How long would they drown? Would they drown longer in Gatorade or less long in Gatorade? Would you drown faster in Gatorade? Let's find out. That's what the Germans were doing. I wonder if there was a theory Saturn was trying to prove or disprove here. I guess the theory being, what if you change the form of the fruit? Does that change the ability for the power to transmit? Why do we need to know that? What is the use case where, somebody can't eat the fruit? Maybe there's an old man. I don't think babies you're trying to give people powers as babies. Maybe you want to see if it manifests. When does it manifest? It manifests when she was, 8? 7? Her father was still around, so maybe she was 6 when it manifested. Maybe that tells you something. What's the earliest a fruit power manifests? Well, it's only one person. It's not a very large sample size, but he could have done it for other people as well. You notice they used a worthless fruit. They're not going to give a powerful fruit to a potential enemy. So, I don't know. It sounds... We don't have enough information. It could be completely unfocused. Let's just do shit to do shit. Or there could be something specific they're trying to do, and this was part of it. We have no way of knowing. It is messed up, by the way. He raises a point. How could you offer him a deal as if you were doing him a favor? You caused this in the first place. That shows how scandalous they are. They are scandalous. They don't give a shit. They'll create a situation and come in and fix it and expect a reward. That's pretty messed up, man. He says, put yourself in my shoes. Would you bother yourself with the feelings of mere insects? That really says it all. This is his entire ideology right here. None of these people matter to him. The only people that matter are his fellow elders and Black Hoodie. And that's about it. Maybe the Celestials. Who knows what he thinks of them? Not much. He experimented on one of the wives of them. So probably he was able to come in and say, "Hey, I'm taking her with me to do some experiments," and the Celestial Dragon had to say, "Okay," right? So, yeah, I think this is a situation where there may be 5 or 6 people in the world he actually respects. I think these are Commodores. They must be. They're not just regular small fries because one of them knows that this isn't a Pacificus because he has the paw prints on his hands. So he can tell the difference. Would a mere grunt who's been in the Navy for 6 months and carries a rifle and that's his job, would he know that? No, I don't think so. So these small fries must be all Commodores and above, right? Like those are the ones that are here on the island with the guns. The authority chip isn't working on him. So, yeah, they must have a high enough rank that he would recognize their authority, and he doesn't. It is interesting, the title, of course, I'm Sorry, Dad, and then Kuma's Fist, right? The I'm Sorry, Dad part is really interesting because she's apologizing because he went through all that to save her life, and then she kind of threw it away, in a way. She put herself in danger. This is something that came up in Harry Potter where his parents sacrificed their lives to save his life. Both of them. And then he carelessly put his life in danger in the 3rd book for stupid reasons. Really stupid reasons. And it was like, wow, and somebody called him out for it, and they're like, wow, how careless you are with this gift your parents gave you. Like, I think it creates an obligation in you when somebody has saved your life to make it worth it. To do something with your life. To not jeopardize your life for stupid reasons. Now, in the Harry Potter case, it was really stupid reasons, like he wanted candy. He went out, risked his life. It was a small threat to his life, but like he still risked his life for candy, right? In this case, she's trying to find answers. She's trying to find him get a definitive answer of what happened to him, and she's trying to take revenge on the people who hurt him. I don't consider that throwing away your life. I don't think that's something to apologize for. I think that those are stakes that are high enough that it's a worthwhile pursuit, and you can't, even if you risk your life or ended your life to save hers, you couldn't expect her to sit on the sidelines in these circumstances. So I personally don't think she has anything to apologize for, but I get the impulse. Interesting. Okay, so they did something. There's another one of the bait and switch the author is so good at. He's like, "What's happening, Vegapunk? He should be dead," and you're thinking he means just the mind, right? And then, we got a minute, maybe longer, maybe 90 seconds of, flashbacks of, him and his daughter and all this shit. Reiterating all that stuff. And then he says it again, he should be dead. Then, here, and what I missed in the reaction, I saw the second half of this. I didn't see the timing of it when he pressed the button. Wasn't sure on that. So, I was looking forward to rewind to find out what that was. It was days after the Revolutionary Army took him. I pressed his self-destruct switch. By the way, there's something here that I just realized I bet that they're probably doing in the anime. HIG said that they're doing they're more faithful to the manga than they were in the past, especially with results of pacing. This is a pacing thing. This is actually really interesting. What are the chances these are 3 different panels in the anime, in the manga? Because this part, I understand this being a separate sentence that's on the, he says this part and it takes a minute to translate it and the English is longer than the Japanese, so okay, this is fine, right? Because days after the Revolutionary Army took him. But I bet this is one panel of the manga. But then we get this. It's only 2 words. These 2 words could have easily been said at the same time as the rest of the words and be one sentence that's on the screen all at the same time. But I bet this is a second panel of the manga. And I bet this is a 3rd panel from the manga. You see how they spaced it out? There was distance in motion between these 3 statements. To space it out. This is how you pace out a reveal, right? This is perfectly done. Because days after the Revolutionary Army took him, I pressed his self-destruct. One sentence that you could cram into one image. 2 probably. I press the self-destruct could easily be 1 image, but they space it out to where there's enough time in between the statements that these are different images that you're seeing the words on, right? Perfectly designed for the subtitles. If you're just watching Japanese with subtitles turned off, I don't think it has the same impact. seeing the words on the screen with the images, I think makes you feel like you're in the manga, you know? So I bet anything the manga has that statement spread out over 3 panels, and that's exactly what the anime did too. Very good reveal. Now, I already talked about at the end of the episode what the implications of this are, so I won't reiterate that here, but the timing was one thing I didn't catch my first watch through. It was days after the Revolutionary took him. So I guess he was hoping he could reclaim him, and finally he's like, okay, well, we can't reclaim him, I'm just going to destroy him. Because he is an asset. That's why he didn't do it immediately. But just a couple days after the army took him, he's like, all right, I'm done. I'm blowing him up. And he thought that was the end of it. Now here he is. We don't know why. But the timing is very interesting. It wasn't right after the Revolutionary Army took him. It wasn't the day the Revolutionary Army took him. It was days after. So he waited, see if he could reclaim him. He couldn't, so he's ready to burn the asset. Speaking of the manga, they go black and white except for the eyes here. The anime only does that when they really want to emphasize something. So this is a big punch. This, he knows he's about to get clapped. And then back to color for the smash. Hawk smash. Kuma smash. And then they do the song, right? And that's it. Another great episode. Be interesting to see how they follow this up. Right now, there's 3 episodes, and there's going to be a 4th one dropping in like 3 or 4 days. So I still have something to get into. But it is interesting. I looked back into, I'd done it before, but I wanted to remind myself. That's how I knew he was 50 years old. Look back into the author's life. And he met his future wife in 2002. They got married in 2004. She played Nami, apparently. He was at some festivals. And I guess this was, 3 or 4 years after One Piece had started as a manga? I guess, well, after the anime had started. The manga a bit longer than that, I guess. But it was 2 or 3 years after the anime had started. They're doing some festival where they had actors playing some of the various One Piece characters, and the woman who ended up being his wife played Nami. And that's, I guess he just went up to her and started talking to her. He's the freaking author. Well, you talk about aura farming. Like, that was probably the easiest date anybody's ever gotten in their life. Unless Henry Cavill's single, you know. Just walk up, start talking. Hey, you're playing one of my characters. Do you want to go grab some tea? Like, that was probably the easiest date you ever got. You still got to close the deal, but, like, you know, getting the first step in the door, like, somebody agreeing to go out with you, like, man, that was probably easy as hell. So, the interesting thing about his personal life is, so he has 2 daughters. They are currently 19 and 16, which means this was written, about 4 years ago? 2 years ago? This was written about 2 years ago, I guess, in the manga, because these episodes are coming out this year. So they would have been 17 and 15. I'm sure he thought of the stories before that. You notice the similarities between this story and Dressrosa with Toy Soldier and Rebecca. Again, we have a father who is estranged from a daughter for very different reasons, but equally horrifying reasons. And they reunite at the end of the story. Fathers and daughters. Not mothers and sons, not fathers and sons, not mothers and daughters, fathers and daughters. These feel like the 2 personal guest star stories. 2 most personal stories he's told. Because, for instance, like Diaper Boy and the Wife is something else you can imagine. Because basically, a lot of times with tragedy, with writers, they imagine the worst thing that could happen. Stephen King imagined his kid being killed by a truck when his kid was like 2 or 3 years old. And then he wrote Pet Sematary. You know, you're as a writer, you think of the worst possible scenarios, the worst case scenarios. Writers take the worst things they can imagine and put them into their stories. So yeah, with the Diaper Boy story, he imagined what if something happened to his wife. What would he not do to like reach her, get a smile on her face? There's nothing he wouldn't do. So that's where that came from, right? Like, you know, he was imagining what if something happened to my wife. Like, he clearly loves her very much. He clearly loves his daughters very much. Only daughters. If he had a son, I wonder if any of these stories would have turned out differently. I think so. These are very personal stories he's telling. Obviously, he has the ability to imagine other kinds of stories, but like a lot of times, the most personal stories we're going to tell are going to be dark reflections of our own life. Joss Whedon never had a father. He was raised by a mother. The father was never in the picture. So there was a strong maternal figure in his life, but no father. So in 12 seasons of the Buffyverse, and then we talk about Firefly and Dollhouse, there was exactly one good father figure in those 4 TV series. One. All the other fathers sucked ass. Because he couldn't imagine a good father-son relationship because he'd never had one. There were other writers in the room. They could imagine it. And there was one good father-daughter relationship, and that's in those stories. Those came from other writers. But everything, the basic ideas of the plots came from him, and there were no good fathers, right? So Stephen King imagined his son getting run over. God knows what else he's imagined in his life. This author has imagined 2 different horrible-ass scenarios of tragedy and pain and sorrow. And maybe, at the end, some kind of closure. In the One Piece. The toy soldier saying, what if my daughter doesn't remember me? I would still care for her. I'd still take care of her. And maybe eventually I can get her memory back. And what if somebody's threatening my daughter? What would I not do? I would do anything if somebody's threatening my daughter. If they can save her life. Not even threatening her. If they can save her life, I'll do anything. Even if it means not being with her. But I'll never stop loving her. Those are the scenarios he imagines. So I feel like these are probably the 2 most personal stories he tells. And again, it is fiction. It's not real life. But the way he depicts fathers and daughters interacting with each other and loving each other is some of the most wholesome, pure shit I've ever seen in my life. He must be a wonderful father. I don't know. He could be the worst father ever. I don't know. You can't draw those kind of conclusions. Because there's fiction and then there's real life. And they're very different things. But we also write what we know. And this man has written the way he had Toy Soldier interacting with Rebecca and loving her, and the way he's had Kuma interacting with Bonnie and loving her. My guess is he is a absolutely wonderful father. Emotional, he probably cries with them when he tells them he loves them. He's probably crying. So they've got a really strong role model, a wholesome, genuine, kind, strong role model for a father. They're going to be well-adjusted kids despite, I'm sure they're very famous. They might be going to school and assume names for all we know. But because in Japan, I don't know if they'd be able to walk down the street without being recognized, even though that they're not the artist, their father is. And very wealthy, of course, right? So there's a good chance they can be spoiled, but I bet they're not spoiled because I think we don't know anything about the mother. Hopefully she's strict, because I doubt the father is strict with them at all, right? Like, from what we've seen. So, he gives them all the love. The mom kicks their ass when they do something wrong, and they're probably very well-adjusted kids, right? They're probably great, But these feel like his 2 most personal stories. We've got, Toy Soldier and Rebecca, and then Bonnie and Kuma, I don't know. It hits me. It's been very emotional. I wonder, though, if Bonnie's going to join the Straw Hats. I can't remember. I think somebody told me there was a set number of Straw Hats conceived from the very beginning of the story, and there were sketches of all of them. And I think it was 12. I could be off, but I think the number was 12, and that we had met 11 of them, and there was also some character that he had changed his mind about. There was a drawing. He had done this drawing a long time ago. Brooke was already there. Frankie was there. He had conceived of all these different character types. And she would make I think we're at 11 right now. I feel like I could be. I think it was 9 for a long time. I think we're at 10. So Bonnie would be 11, and then there's a 12th, if I'm right about the 12. 12 makes sense. 12 is a good number. 11 is a kind of a wonky number. So I don't know, but I can totally see her joining the crew, because so far we only have 2 women. Is that correct? I can see her joining the crew for this last little bit. The credits seem to apply. I think we saw her sitting on the Thousand Sunny. That couldn't help it. I think that's the shot we've been seeing, though, for all the time at the very end of the theme song. She looks like she's sitting in a swing. She could be sitting in a swing on the Thousand Sunny. I'm not sure. But she looks at peace too in that drawing, so that's pretty cool. I think she's going to join the crew. I think she's going to be a big part in the final saga. But I don't know. But yeah, like to me, I do wish we were getting more focus on the Straw Hats. I feel like there's characterization we're leaving by the wayside. I feel like there's still stuff we could do. Maybe not with backstories, but with forward going, like they did with Sanji. He got to get closure with his family and stuff. Wouldn't mind seeing that with somebody else. I do think Brooks gonna be reunited with Laboon at some point. We're getting that, if nothing else. That'll probably be part of the falling action after the climax. But this is a very interesting, very satisfying, very emotionally rich side character storyline. She's clearly the side character of this arc. One more thing before I forget. I do think Vegapunk's going to die trying to save her life. Like, I feel a little bit better about him. He does seem morally outraged. He wasn't in on everything. I'm always going to blame him for Kuma. But I think he's going to do the right thing. Well, it's not just Kuma, though. It's the fact that he never turned his back on the government until they decided to kill him. He had no choice. He never made a decision, hey, I'm done with their shit. They're just too horrible. I'm not going to help them anymore. Never. He would still be working with them today and would turn into Straw Hats. Because he says, look, I'm a government man. You can't be coming up in here like this. He would turn them in. Or at best, tell them to get away immediately, or he would turn them in, right? So, threaten them. So, those are the reasons why I don't like him. And I think you need to watch your back with him. Because what if they came to him and said, look, we're not going to kill you. Everything's cool. We'll sign whatever you want. We'll make a deal with you. You can come back. You can come out of the cold, as they say. Everything's cool. We won't kill you. He would probably go back to him. Maybe not. Maybe I'm underestimating, but I just know that from what we've seen actually happen, he never turned his back on the government no matter after everything they did. He can cry all he wants to about what they did to Kuma. He still worked with them after that. So I don't trust him. But I do think he will die saving her life, which will prove to me he was a good person ultimately. We all make mistakes. He made mistakes. He redeemed himself by sacrificing his life for her. We'll see. But that's what I think is going to happen.